How to play bar power chords or fifth chords. These chords go under several names, and the most common one is probably power chords. However, you sometimes hear them referred to as rock chords and as fifth chords. Theoretically, the correct term should be the fifth chords. However, before we go any further, it's worth mentioning why they're called power chords and how they've got that name. When you play a power chord, you get that distinctive rock sound, especially if you put a bit of distortion on it. However, it's worth pointing out that power chords aren't always used in what you'd call rock music. For example, the reason I'm uploading this video at this point is because the last tune we covered was Everybody Hurts by REM, which couldn't really be described as a rock piece. However, it does include fifth chords. Now, you'll hear if I play the power chord or the fifth chord for a G, and then I play a full G major in the bar chord position, the power chord definitely has a more powerful sound, even though it consists of fewer notes. Let's hear that again, but this time with distortion. The reason the correct name for a power chord is a fifth chord is because really it only consists of two notes, and those notes would be the root of the scale, in this case G, and the fifth note of the scale, in this case the D. So if we break down this chord, you can see the first note of the chord is the G root, and then if we skip a string and go straight on to the D string, you'll see you're playing another G an octave up. In the middle between these two notes is the fifth note of the G major scale, and that is the D. And you can work that out. 1 is G, 2 is A, 3 is B, 4 is C, and 5 is D. And this is why it's called a G5, because it only consists of the G and the 5. And we've already demonstrated why the fifth chord is called a power chord, because it has a far more powerful sound than a full major or minor chord. And the reason for this is that the frequencies of the notes in the fifth chord add together perfectly to create a good resonance, and this gives it more power. If we add the third, which is what we would do to play a major or a minor chord, the frequency of the third works against the other two notes in the chord and therefore reduce the power of it. So if you're looking for a good, powerful, rock sounding chord, the fifth chord is the one to choose. Right, let's take a look at how to play the G fifth chord. The first thing I need to point out when you're learning to play the chords is the fact that you only play 3 strings. Therefore, one of the most important things you need to learn when playing these chords is plectrum accuracy, or finger accuracy if you're not using a pick. If you play too many notes, you'll destroy the sound by creating a discord. So therefore, if you're not too accurate with the plectrum, it's probably better to aim for 2 notes rather than 3. And then if you overshoot, you'll just create a perfect chord. Whereas if you just strike the 2 notes, it will still sound like a good power chord. This is still a bit of a cop-out though. It's better for you to practice the accuracy of your plectrum so you get a good power chord every time. When playing these bar fifth chords, there's two ways of doing it. You can either play them with 3 fingers, that's the first, third and fourth finger, or with 2 fingers, the first and third. I personally prefer the 2-finger method because you've got less fingers to get into place, making them a little bit quicker. However, practice both methods to find out which way works for you and which way you get to the chord more quickly and get a more accurate result with. And then stick to that, because you don't want to split your practice time by playing the chord in 2 different ways. You might find that whilst playing the 5th chords, your fingers overlap onto the strings that you shouldn't be playing. However, don't worry about this as long as you get good contact with the strings you should be playing. In fact, some guitarists purposely overlap their fingers onto the open strings in order to prevent them from ringing, and this helps keep the guitar quiet or prevent feedback when you're playing with heavy distortion or a very loud amplifier. Once you can play this G5 bar chord, you can play most of them, and that's because of the way the chords work. They get their name from the root of the chord, which in this case is the 3rd fret of the bottom E string. Therefore, the 3rd fret of the bottom E string is the G, hence G5. So, if we were to play exactly the same pattern in the 5th fret, we would have an A5, and this is because the A is the 5th fret of the bottom E string. As another example, if you were to play the same pattern in the 1st fret, you'd be playing F5, and that's because the 1st fret of the bottom E string is F. So, by learning the names of the notes on the bottom E string, you'll be learning all the 5th chords that can relate to those notes. And I'm sure you'll agree that's very powerful. Let's see and hear that for the main notes up to the 8th fret. Finding the 5th chords from the names of the notes doesn't have to stop here either. You can do exactly the same thing on the A strings. However, this time you're playing the 3 notes from the A onwards, so it takes a little more plectrum accuracy. However, here you can see you can play the B, C, D, E and F if we go up to the 8th fret. So let's see and hear that done. If you look at the name of the notes from the 1st fret to the 8th fret using the bottom E string and A string, you'll notice you've got the complete set from F to F. You can also find the sharps and flats by simply taking the chord up a fret for a sharp or down a fret for a flat, remembering that down is going towards the nut or the headstock, and up is going towards where you pick or strum. I've done a far more detailed video on how to remember the names of the notes on the guitar, and I'll put the link to that below in the description. To encourage you to practice these chords, it's worth me pointing out that there's quite a number of bands that have written songs that literally just consist of 5th chords. A couple of bands I can mention would be Nirvana or White Stripes. And White Stripes in particular produced Button to Button and Seven Nation Army completely on fifth chords. And this is just a small fraction of the bands and tunes. I could list them for ages, but this is enough to make you realise that these chords are really powerful. And once you memorise them, they'll open the door to lots of interesting music. Right, let's try a few exercises to practice these fifth chords. You'll find the tab if you need it at ebooksforguitar.com, and it's month 11, week 1. In the following exercises, you'll notice that some of the chords are underlined. These chords are second position or A-rooted bar chords, but you should be able to see that from the tablature. Exercise 1. Looking at the first line of this exercise, you'll notice all the chords are in the 5th fret, and you're going between the A-fifth, which is an E string rooted bar chord, and the D-fifth, which is the A string rooted bar chord. You might also have noticed that there are some single notes being played. However, these are part of the chord, so when you play these, don't remove the shape of the chord. Therefore, when you're playing this exercise, you should be able to hold the chord shape all the way through at least the first line. So let's look at the first line now. Let's see and hear that played again. With the second line of this exercise, again you can maintain the shape throughout. With this one though, there's more changes in position. You start on the 3rd fret and work your way up and end on the 2nd fret in the 2nd position. So let's hear the second line now. Let's see and hear that played again. You'll notice with these exercises, I'm playing the examples without distortion, and that's so you can hear clearly what I'm doing. However, if you want to practice with distortion, that's fine. Also, it's worth noting, just because I'm using an electric guitar doesn't mean you have to do these on an electric guitar. They sound just as good with an acoustic guitar. Right, let's hear and see the whole of exercise 1. Let's see and hear that again, but this time, if you can, try playing along with it. You'll notice with this exercise, and in fact with all these exercises, if you can, try to hold the chord shape. That way you can get between the chords far more quickly. However, it will take a bit of practice before you can do it. Exercise 2. Exercise 2 only consists of one line. However, watch out because there's a repeat. The chords are fairly straightforward as well, in that you start on the 5th fret and you work down a fret each time. However, you go from the 1st position to the 2nd position, back to the 1st position and back to the 2nd position, and then repeat. You'll also notice in the last 2 bars a bow over the two A5s. This joins them both together, so you just play one A5 and let it hold for the whole 2 bars. Let's hear the whole exercise with repeats. Let's see and hear that played again, noticing that there's 2 beats between each chord. And if you feel like you can play along, you could try playing along with it. Exercise 3. This exercise looks the most complicated, however it isn't really. If you look at the first 2 bars and then the second 2 bars, you'll notice they're the same thing. So the first line is fairly straightforward. Let's see and hear the first line played. Let's see and hear that played again. The second line of exercise 3 is very simple. We simply play the G5 8 times and then move the chord up by 2 frets to finish on the A5. However, let's hear that done anyway. Right, let's see and hear the entire of exercise 3 being played. And if you think you can play along with it, have a try. Let's see and hear that played again. The metronome speed used in the exercises in this tutorial was 120 beats per minute. However, you don't have to practice at that speed. You can practice more slowly or more quickly, depending on your own preference. If you find you have to practice more slowly, you can build up the speed over time. If you enjoyed this tutorial and would like to hear more like it, don't forget to like and subscribe so you'll get notifications of when I upload new videos. You'll also find the ebooks that accompany this course available at ebooksforguitar.com, and they're completely free to view online.